Good morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. I'm Barry Bryson. We're continuing and at the conclusion of our study of the suffering servant passage. We're in chapter 55 and 56, and we're at in the last the big song at the end. The big production number, the song of triumph that we have that is going to include all peoples. And we've talked about how um, this is gospel. I mean, this whole passage is gospel, but particularly these verses are gospel, and the gospel was preached from these verses. Read the book of Acts. And Isaiah is the Old Testament prophet that is most frequently quoted in the New Testament. And we read so many biblical quotes in this final passage, 55 through 56, verse 8. And we're going to recognize some very familiar verses today while we read verses 6 through 9. Seek the Lord while he may be found. Call upon him while he is near. Let the wicked forsake his way, and the righteous man his thoughts, and let him return to Yahweh, and he will have compassion on him, and to our God, for he will abundantly pardon. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are my ways your ways, declares the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so also my ways are higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. I've heard both. I've heard this passage quoted all my life, but in two spots. The seek the Lord while he may be found, and then my thoughts are not your thoughts, nor are my ways your ways. And growing up, that second part was used to explain and emphasize God's otherness, that we can't always understand God, that God is so far above us, and all that's true. And there are so many passages, and that's necessary to this larger passage. But this passage is not about separating us from God, but it's about bringing us close to God, and God explaining, you may not understand why I love you so much, but that's okay. Just accept that I do, because I'm calling you and giving you my salvation. This is Paul in Second Corinthians at the end of chapters 5 and 6. This is Paul saying, "We urge you, be reconciled to God." This is Jesus saying, "Come unto me, all ye who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." Seek the Lord while he may be found. And notice that we really have two voices here. We have the voice of the prophet, and then God continuing to burst forth in song, in the song, the way we had in the first passage. We have the Lord, bursting forth in verse 4. I have made a witness. You will call a nation, and I'm going to do this. And we have the prophet 6 and 7. Seek the Lord while he may be found. Yes, I said 6 and 7. 6 and 7. Seek the Lord while he may be found. And then God speaking, my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are my ways your ways. As high as the heavens are above the earth, so are my thoughts higher than your thoughts, and my ways higher than your ways. The Apostle Paul and also Peter will emphasize the fact that um, people will not understand how this makes any sense. 1 Corinthians chapter 1, we preach Christ crucified. It is a stumbling block to the Jews. It is foolishness to the Greeks. The whole notion of the suffering servant of God, that God would sacrifice himself for us when we don't deserve it, that God would humble himself for us when we are not worthy, that this is something the Jews would not be able to swallow. This is something that the Greeks, the Romans, were going to deride as silliness, as foolishness. Peter talks about, the mystery. Well, Paul does too in Ephesians chapter 1. The mystery that people long to understand, but now was made evident in Christ Jesus. The things that even angels long to look into. And it's this. that people don't want to accept. They don't want to accept that God would love us so much that he would humble and sacrifice himself so that his justice could be satisfied and his love could be expressed to us. It's beyond our comprehension. And in this passage, God says, yes, it is. It is indeed. And that's okay, because my thoughts are not your thoughts and my ways are not your ways. As high as the heavens are above the earth, so are my thoughts higher than your thoughts and my way higher than your way. Okay, we're going to look at verses 10 and 11 next time. A couple of verses that recently have been misunderstood or misapplied. So we're looking forward to that. Talk to you next time. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word.